Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Andy? That's interesting. Can you? Yes, okay. I can't hear myself. This is funky. So I'm going to have to just go to my slides and present full screen and not see myself and assume that I'm being heard. Very weird. Well, I can't hear anybody. I can't hear myself. So
Hey, have you tried to refresh the browser? Or
I can't hear you either, Bo. Says my audio. Oh, there. Now I'm hearing myself. I'm not sure that that's a good idea. Bo, you say something?
Well, I did a minute ago, but you couldn't hear me.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
But I can't hear myself. This is lovely.
Well, you might restart the browser, or not. Like go back out of the session and back in and see if it helps. Because I know refreshing it, hop in, helps it sometimes because it does get glitchy.
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it where it is.
Okay.
Just because, and I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do that. That's just weird. You can hear me full speed here now or full volume?
Yep. Hi, I'm here. Can you see me all right?
Very weird. Okay. I'm going to just set to present mode then and leave it like this.
That looks good.
Looks all right. And you can hear me?
Yep, I can hear you great.
All right. We'll wing it that way, I guess.
Cool.
I just want to keep you guys turned down a little bit because it doesn't seem to want to play nice with my speaker and my mic, you know.
Understood. It might be doing you a favor by not having you hear yourself for feedback purposes. That's why I'm wearing my headphones, but let's not mess with it. I think you keep talking,
we'll
and if you can hear me, if I can correct or clarify, I'll do that. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan.
Cool.
Sounds like a plan. And, you know, it seems like sometimes my video goes on and sometimes it goes off. On the meeting that I'm looking at. I'm not going to worry about whether I'm seen or not, though. Hey, Ralph.
Yeah, your volume is a little low.
My volume is a little low?
I don't know if you move closer.
How do I adjust that, do you suppose?
Maybe move closer to the microphone?
I can move closer to the thing. How's that? And I can speak up a little bit, too. Hi, Ralph. Not much better, to be honest. Oh, boy. Okay. How about Andy?
I think
sound check for Andy.
I think he said I was clear.
Huh.
But I'm probably louder than you, Bob.
How can that be? turn my mic up a little bit.
Cool. He says I am loud
Sound
and
check.
crystal
Test,
clear.
Test. 1, 2, 3. Hello, Karen Stevenson.
At 9 o'clock, and Bob, you have some notifications on the top of the slide.
Oh yeah,
We don't need
we
that.
should.
It's
We don't
okay.
need that. Let me know if they show up, and I'll get rid of them.
That's okay.
My slides, and not worry about what I look like. Okay, folks. It's 9:01 a.m. Andy, what do you think? Should we get started or wait for a little bit more?
I think we'll give it another minute. And I see Adrian said hi. Hi, Adrian.
There's Adrian. All right.
People are rolling in. So we'll give it 1 minute and then get it started. Okay.
Good. We need like some background music or something.
And grab a guitar. Fill in the time. If I'm crystal clear.
Play a little thing.
That's true. Probably not bang on the drums unless it's, setting up something. I don't know. Adrian wants me to play. Hilarious. One of these times.
Hi, James.
Everybody wants you to bump up, Bob.
Second request for volume on the mic. Is that better? Hello, is that better? Volume-wise? Nope. I'm so sorry. I don't know what the deal is. I will try to speak up and hopefully not blow everybody out.
Get it rolling, Bob.
We're going to get it rolling. Welcome, everybody. Chattanooga Drupal Camp, second round of sessions. This is Drupal Recipes. The kind of opening is, don't you wish you had a site building recipe book when you started Drupaling? I did. I had this one called Using Drupal, which was awesome. I think Karen had a hand in that, Jeff Eaton, and a number of other folks. So this is a session that's going to be, I guess, led by me, and Andy's going to be doing some things, and Adrian McKee is also on with us. It's an initiative right now of the Fox Valley Drupal user group, and just kind of the big idea is a recipe is a guide for mixing together a bunch of ingredients to create something really tasty. And that's what we're trying to do here. Who's Bob Snodgrass? Well, I've been around for a little while. Been doing Drupal since about 2008 with 4.7 and all the way through where we're at now. That's about all I'm going to say right now on that. We started the Fox Valley Drupal group back in January of 2019. And this is Andy.
Hey, everybody. I'm Andrew Olson. I go by Andy. I'm a front-end developer at Bounteous. I live in the Chicago suburbs. I also am most recently a co-maintainer of the TB Mega Menu module. We're making some exciting updates for D7, Legacy, D8, and D9 moving forward. I also do the live captioning initiative. So all things captioning get me excited and get me out of bed. You can find me on the Twitters and D.O at Andrew Ozone.
Yeah. And Adrian is also here with us. Adrian works with me over at Net2 Community. He's the maintainer for foxvalleydrupal.org. He's also a contributor on Drupal Recipes. He's got a really long-standing career that he retired from in the area of telecommunications and wide area networking. And he also owns and maintains a number of Drupal sites. He's Adrian 6254 on Drupal.org. And I think he got here a little bit late to jump in and do any presenting, but he'll be monitoring the chat for us. So that being said, a little disclaimer here. We don't have a book. There is no Drupal Recipes book right now. I think there's a number of them that have some books that have those kinds of things in them, but it's really our hope that we're going to encourage more participation in this little effort to help save future Drupal people the pain and suffering in their Drupal journey. And why Drupal Recipes? Well, Drupal's gotten more and more complex over the years. It's still as complex a learning curve as it used to be. And some things are kind of hard to understand. It's a little different animal. So we're hoping to provide some Drupal recipes that help make that a little easier to deal with. So what's the status or kind of the history of where this thing came up at? We've had a bunch of people involved in this from the Fox Valley Drupal user group. Adrian, myself, and Will Long and Andy Olson, and then Ralph Kohler's throwing in a lot of great ideas, and Hussein Abbas also kind of had a hand in this, and he's involved on the fringes right now. Hopefully he'll get a little bit more involved. We created foxvalleydrupal.org about 4 months ago, and we originally posted the idea for this announcing Drupal recipes in June of this year. We had our first planning meeting for the website and for how we're going to deploy the recipes part of that in late June. And then I had an opportunity to be involved in the Asheville Drupal camp this summer, and there was an unconference discussion that we held for half a day. I threw the Drupal recipes idea out, and everybody said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So that kind of validated that this is something that might be needed and could be used. And then at DrupalCon, there was a BOF session that Hussein Abbas put out there, and I kind of ran across it, and we jumped in, and we had a really great discussion during that BOF on this whole idea. And so we've been working on getting this kind of developed and getting people involved in it and having a lot of discussions. There's been Drupal Slack channel started for recipes, and we've been posting notes out there of every discussion that we've had on this thing. And there's been a number of user group presentations, Fox Valley Drupal and Chicago Drupal and some others. We've talked about this numerous times now. So that's kind of the history. So to the idea of behind Drupal recipes, Drupal, back in the old days when I started, there were a lot of great books using Drupal. I mentioned there's a number of others that are out there too. Using Drupal, I don't know what's going on with that, if they're going to do a D8 or D9 version, but I think the latest version of that does takes into account Drupal 7 work. But there's always the Drupal documentation we can go to, and it's much better these days. But if you really want to get into building things and figuring out what you're going to do, the path to getting there for a new site builder is a little difficult. And I found it really intriguing going through the using Drupal book when I started, and then I went through the modules list out on D.O, and that's how I kind of got into learning about what you could build with Drupal, and how you could put things together. We want to make this something that's going to give a repeatable guide for building certain functional parts of a project. So many times you're going to put together multiple modules into a recipe that will be repeatable and you can use to build the kind of foundation of a website without having to go back to the drawing board every time. So that's kind of the idea of this thing, to make it extendable and sustainable, so that people could pick it up and work with it, and use that as the basis to build upon. We don't want to duplicate the things that already exist out there. There's lots and lots of great documentation. There's lots and lots of blog posts and books and stories and case studies out there, but they don't really get into, some of them don't get into the nitty gritty. But we don't want to duplicate those things that are already there. If you take a look at the web form module and that whole ecosystem around that, Jacob Rockowitz has done an awesome job. He's done probably the best job of anybody, putting all the things together around all the things you can do with web forms. So that's probably not one thing that we're going to start with, certainly, because there's already great stuff around web form, but there's other things that aren't really there. We want to make these recipes also very evergreen, so that we get updates on them and build them out and test them and continue to embellish them as it makes sense. And then finally, we want to contribute this back to D.O. When we started this idea, we weren't sure where we were going to take it, whether we were going to help us with our user group presentation ideas and documenting for new people, bringing new people into our user group, or where it was going to go, really. But we want to do that contribution back to D.O. So with that, I think I'll just describe a little bit, and then I'll go into the recipe workshop. I'm going to have Andy talk through one of the recipes that he's put out there. But we put D.O or Fox Valley Drupal together with Drupal 8 with Olivero, and the site building, most of that was done by Adrian, and the config sync, and we've got a GitLab CI/CD set up, and thanks to Will Long, Karasai, he's helped us with that, and so this automatically deploys to the multi-dev out on Pantheon, where we can do testing, and then once we pushed out to master or merge into master, it gets deployed out to the live site or out to the Pantheon process from dev, test, and live. So that's how we do things. So with that, let's go to Foxley Drupal recipes here. And this is the responsive images one. And I'll just have Andy take us through talking about that.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. So when we talked about this, at my organization, we have a good group of really good Drupalists, and we're all doing really cool and exciting things, but it's really hard when you're off doing those things to share and extend that knowledge out. So what we've done is monthly, we have a monthly get-together, and somebody talks about kind of some of the cool things that they're doing and what they're bringing to a project. A lot of that was inspired by, well, why don't we do that for the community? And one of the things that I was able to talk about in my organization was about responsive images. Again, there's some really great talks, and there's great talks still happening. I think the San Francisco Drupal meetup is next week is having a talk about responsive images. So the cool thing about this recipe is this is my experience with a recipe trying to stand it up based on some other blog posts that I've read and other input, some other great sessions that I've seen. But this is me just step by step trying to stand up something quickly, get basic concepts down and understand it and share that out to other people. So with this, just want to talk through the objective and exactly what are responsive images. So I'll give a brief overview of what responsive images are. It allows you to only load a certain image, whether it's high quality image for like a Retina device or a regular image or different sized images at different breakpoints, but it doesn't load all those images. It allows the browser to make the determination of what it wants to load and what best image the site will display. So you don't download all 4 images, it downloads the best and appropriate image only. So it can really help your site perform a lot better. So it all sounds great in theory. You can read a lot of articles and the syntax gets a little hairy and a little nervous as you go through it. So what I want to do is kind of break it down and just stand up something quick before I implement it into my site. So in this case, it was inspired by the ProMet responsive images blog post there. Also just the responsive images documentation on D.O. And then there's also the third link there is just the Mozilla describing what responsive images are. So again, when I had this idea, worked with Bob to kind of come up with a structure of how to communicate this out. So as you see at the top, it's just the objective and what are responsive images. The next part of this recipe is just inspired by, because again, I'm just taking all these other recipes and I'm making it my own and interpreting responsive images in my own way.
Just one little note
Sure.
to interrupt. This recipe inspired by, there's a lot of these great blog posts and ideas that are floating out there. We want to give credit back to these folks, and that's why we've put in some of these links. Each one of these, you can have as many of these in this area that you want, and it will create a link that allows you to put the title in, some description of it, and then the link to that. For each one of these guys, you can put as many as you want in. So that's an entity construction kit item on that field that allows us to put as many in as we want. So it makes us kind of flexible with the way that we can organize these things.
And so next up, this is just a standalone. It's active because I'm still working on it. I have some great feedback from Rolf, who I believe is on. He took this recipe and implemented it, and then I'm going back and making improvements to it. But this is still my first cut, so I'm still working through Ralph's feedback. But scroll down a little bit. So it just says what version of Drupal. And then these are the steps to build. Again, what I did is I just interpreted, like I needed to stand up and understand responsive images myself without breaking or giving you all the complexities of all the Drupal sites that I work on every day. So what I did is I made an environment steps, and this is optional. But what I did is Brian Perry has this Olivero sandbox, which allowed me to stand up a D8 really quickly using Lando. So with these 3 commands, I was able to just have a working Olivero D8 site, which was really awesome. And then I had a Drush to just log in as an admin, and I was off to the races. So again, roll this your own way. You can go down to step 1. But going into it is, again, I'm just breaking this down as to my journey of a recipe. So I enabled these modules. Again, trying to link off enough where if above there was talk about like if you don't know what Drush is. But basically, you enable some modules. I just added my own Olivero. Olivero already has some breakpoints, but I wanted to roll my own and really understand and roll around in it and break things safely, right? So I made this test breakpoint, keep scrolling down. I went into image styles, and they just give you my names of what I'm just trying to do. I'm scaling and cropping, this image. I'm making responsive image style, and then I apply it. The things that are missing on this, again, Ralph took this and did step-by-step. I want to be a little bit more explicit about what you're making and what you'll actually see. So I have some images. I'm going to provide some screenshots of what, so it's a lot of easier recipe so you can kind of see, just like any good recipe, they have a picture of what it looks like on the plate. Granted, it might not look like that at the end, but if I give you the right images and I show you kind of what we're making along the way, it'll help you out. Yeah, so these hopefully are just some pretty simple instructions to get you along the way, step by step, to set up responsive images. And at the very bottom too are not only, these are other things that I learned along the way is, you can do certain things with pixel densities. You can actually swap images if you detect the person has their browser dark mode. There's some really cool things that these potentially could be other recipes, and then I could link that to other recipes. So with that is, not too much about this recipe in particular, but what I wanted to show you is I took this about responsive images. I spoke at the Fox Valley Drupal, and this is my short list of notes. And during it, I stood up an Olivero D8 site. I walked through step by step and showed people how to do this. And that was the end of it. So other things that we can add to this are the video of me walking through it. So that session was actually recorded. So I could also have a link in here. But this is just an example of some knowledge that I had on a project. I really needed to understand responsive images in a safe way and just play around with it. And so these are my notes.
Yeah. So the idea of these things is that, you got to create something that people can use for just about anything. And that's been a little tricky. We want to make sure that we've got some things being built into this so that we can easily pull out recipes based on tags or Drupal version, or give credit back to the supporting organizations and the participants that work on these things. We've got the status up here, which tells us which you have different stages. This one is active. It's not quite to the point where we're ready to take it anywhere, but it's plenty good enough for people to get started on, and then make some comments back. So that's kind of the idea there. Let's see if I can get back to my slides here. So Drupal.org documentation is really awesome, and it's getting better and better all the time. But we wanted to make sure that we were doing things so that we didn't just have these things get stuck in. Fox Valley Drupal.org is our user group. We want to extend it out to the rest of the community. And so we wanted to find out how we could help. So I started to dig in a little bit. I wasn't very involved with the documentation, and still am not really very involved with it, but I came to learn that there's really two different levels of guides on Drupal.org. There's the official guides, and those are off of Drupal.org/documentation. And then there are community guides, which are a little bit less. Anybody that's in the community can go and put one of those guides in there and start to build off of it. But we didn't know where to really put these things. So the starting point for that is on the Understanding Drupal page. And so we had some conversations with some of the folks that are doing documentation, and I got feedback from Joe Schindler and Jennifer Hodgins, and they suggested that probably the best place to put this would be in the Extending Drupal guide. And so we actually have a page that we put together for Drupal recipes, kind of a starting point. We're reaching out to the maintainer, the Extending Drupal area, and we're starting to put together some meat around this on D.O. And what we're hoping for is that we can get a lot more people throwing down on these recipes, either becoming involved in it on their own, or jumping in and starting to put together some other recipe type ideas. One of the things that I notice on D.O is that when you get down to this level of Extending Drupal, and then the next one that you get to is, the next one you get to is contributed modules. There's great documentation on a lot of these, and they're getting better, but it's just really a long page and hard to go through. So, and each of these are also pretty much focused on either a main module or a series of modules that work together. So they're almost like recipes, but they're not quite. And so we're kind of in between time on these things. And right now, Extending Drupal is probably the right place for recipes to go, and we're just going to start there. Joe suggested that we can move it someplace else later on once it gets into a little bit of meat around this thing on D.O. So Andy and myself and Adrian are maintainers on that Drupal recipes right now, and we'll be looking for some more people to throw down and help us on that. So all that being said, what's next? We want to promote people to get on foxvalleydrupal.org and sign up and go through the process of creating some recipes. We've got some more work to do around the foxvalleydrupal.org site, some site adjustments and improvements that we've been talking about, things like moderation, things like some access control, things like making it a little bit more user-friendly as far as presenting things, and some of the theme adjustments and those types of things are going to be what we're working on next. And then we're going to start posting those recipes out on D.O recipes, Drupal recipes, and we're looking for more people to solicit more people to work with us on ideas and participate in this thing. So how do you get started with Drupal recipes? Visit foxvalleydrupal.org. Go ahead and create an account. We want you to join the Drupal Slack. There's a link in these slides to go out on Drupal and be able to get a link if you're not already on the drupal.slack.com. And then we suggest that you get in and collaborate on recipes in the Pound Recipes channel. And then you might also want to consider joining the documentation channel. and becoming involved there as well. So I thought that these would be some good starting discussion and ideas. I don't think we really have a discussion mechanism here in Hoppin that would work for us very well. But we can certainly take a look through the chat and find out what questions you might have, and Andrew and I will try and answer them.
Starting at the top of it, I've been moving along. Thanks for the idea of code snippet module to make the code a lot easier to read. That's a great idea. We'll definitely take that in. As far as Amy June says, the official guides have moderated editorial process, which is very good to know. Again, what we're trying to do, we're trying to keep the goal in mind of sharing our Drupal knowledge in a way out, knowing full well that documentation, as we said, module by module, that's great, but these recipes span possibly a few different modules, may also involve some other setup or other things that are not Drupal-y. So where and how does that fit out on Drupal.org? We're trying to just understand it ourselves, take our recipes and share them out, kind of find a structure to it. That was the first thing with Bob and I. I'm going off a little bit here, but some of the things that Bob and I first discussion is he's like, I need a recipe. And I'm like, well, what's your structure? Like, is it step by step? You know, what is that? And we're still trying to find that structure. That's why Adrian has a few. Karen put one out there. So we're still trying to find that structure. But let's go ahead and go into the question. James asks, I have taken to writing guides at Dev 2. I keep meaning to move some of my Lando specific material to Lando guides, but feel like the visibility on dev.to is more appealing. What is being considered to raise visibility for recipe contributors? Bob, do you have initial thoughts?
Well, there again, the first step is to contribute back to Drupal.org. That's certainly a way to do that. We want to make sure that we are linking back out to good existing sources of this kind of information. So we're wanting to have that happen. We've thought about possibly putting together a project on D.O and having issues there as well. I'm not familiar with dev.to. So I don't know what could be put in to that kind of format at all. But we're open to all kinds of information.
Yeah, I was not familiar. It's medium.com for developers. Great. Yeah, I just pulled the link up. I was not familiar with that. So that's great to see another example in the wild of recipes and guides that'll help us learn. The thing about what Bob and I are doing is we're not trying to invent something. We're trying to find, I feel like we're still in an early stage of trying to define how we take our knowledge and share it out. We're not trying to, may or may not make like a hub that's the one dev solve, right? Maybe this dev.to is the place where we take our conversations, but we're struggling with our Drupal knowledge and sharing them in a way that helps other people. And this all started at our meetups where somebody talks about a topic. They typically go step by step, and then you have slides, and then that's the end of that. Somebody might write a great blog post the next day or the day after. That's a variation of that. So how do we tie all these things kind of together and share them in a way and get really good collaboration so it's not a one-off blog post that's like 2-3 years old that might be able to be improved upon? Do you write the blog writer and have them make an addendum to it? Do they do a repost because that has the most traffic when you look for responsive images in Drupal? How do you bake that into the Drupal module guide? So this is where we're looking for ideas. what is the best way to get this Drupal knowledge and these recipes out there in the world, community, people to verify that it's a good recipe, and really help grow the knowledge.
Yeah, and we've kind of used Drupal recipes as kind of our touchstone for organizing our meetups. So people come up with an idea of a recipe that they want to do, and then we start involving them in the meetup, because the more you talk about how you're doing something, the more feedback you get. It's just a good way to get some conversation around these recipes as they're being built. And so our next Fox Valley Drupal meetup is going to be on Wednesday, November 3rd. We usually do it in the evening, 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And it's a Zoom type meeting, and we're going to continue a hybrid type thing if we ever get to go back to in real life meeting again, but or at the point that we do that. But you're certainly welcome to be involved in those conversations. Ralph Kohler from Germany gets on there quite often, as well as a number of these other meetings, and that's a real advantage of all the things that are going on online these days. But it's been great having him and a number of other people be involved in these. Been a lot of fun. I'd be really curious if anybody's got any interest in other user groups wanting to pick up and do their own Drupal recipes type thing, and how would we go about doing that? What's the best way to do that? So those are a lot of the ideas we're kind of kicking around now.
Journey, like this is where we are today. We have a site where we feel like we can capture recipes and create a structure around them. We now have we think we have a documentation area out on Drupal.org. We're kicking around the project idea. Again, people should be able to get credit as they work on this and share that knowledge out there. But before we spread ourselves a little too thin, what we want to do is make sure that people can moderate and take these on and come up with that process. And yeah, to Bob's point, it'd be great to know if there's other meetups that are out there that want to take on or are excited about the idea that Fox Valley Drupal is doing, is that we're dedicating time of a collection of people to kind of talk through recipes and work on them, and capture them.
Some of the interesting conversations we had in our DrupalCon BOF that we were all involved in were discussions about how do we take what we're doing on pieces of the recipes, things that we're doing on foxvalleydrupal.org and put them out. How do we put together an easy deployment for a recipe for somebody to be able to, test that out? So we've got Simply Test, and we've got the Tugboat stuff that's out there. And so, there's a lot of different ideas that people had talked about that we want to investigate as well, and we just haven't got there yet. So.
Comment about Google Contrib Weekend. It's the last weekend in January. I think that's a great idea to take ourselves there.
Yeah.
What we found is very useful is getting a recipe using the structure we have today. We're open to more feedback on if our structure is good to communicate a recipe. But then like what Ralph was able to do with my responsive images is test out a recipe, provide that feedback coming back in, improving that recipe, and then kind of verifying that, yes, this works. This is a good approach. So we'd love to have more ideas. I know Karen is able to put her recipe out there for I want to get it exactly right on the site, is the video gallery. So that was something that she was able to make on a project. She said, is this a good recipe? And we said, absolutely. You used a bunch of different modules. You had an approach. Capture that. Tell us step by step how you kind of pulled that together. She found it exciting. I'm putting words in her mouth, but this is a conversation that we had. Was it was exciting for her to strip it out of like a neutral site and start over about what were the actual steps. You don't have the shackles of your current site and structure and all the things that you have. Is if you start with a fresh Drupal 8 install, how do you pull off a video gallery? What were those steps to do that without making it terribly complicated? So then you could take that recipe and make it your own. And the last piece of that is just being able to verify that. I wanted to see her video gallery. There might be some accessibility things in my experiences with sites that I could bring to it. How are the controls? When you play a video, is it able to be stopped? Other things that excited me about her recipe was I have not been able to really work closely with the media module. So this for me is a great way to understand how she interacted with the media module and views. So it's a recipe that I was excited for her to put out there and finish. And then I really want to test drive it and see if I have anything to contribute back.
So, Michael just put something else out there too. And I saw Karen put some things out as far as project examples. That was a real interesting one to me as well in the chat. So we'll be posting the chat pieces out here. But Michael says, what about a recipe meetup? Something recorded and structured from beginner to advanced. Start from basic and keep progressing. That's essentially what we've been doing with our Fox Valley Drupal meetups. A lot of the discussion, however, has been in the front end of trying to get our legs under us as far as what do we really want to do with this thing. So now we're really into the point of actually doing meetups that are recipe builds and that, and a recipe could be a standalone meeting that just happens with the people that are interested in it too. So I'd be real interested to start collecting some of those that just happen.
A little deeper into that, I think, Bob, what we were saying is the Fox Valley Drupal, in light of us being able to physically meet, we were saying, what can we do? And that's where the idea of the recipes is, hey, let's take some of the talks we've given, really outline them and make them repeatable, because that's what kind of our knowledge of our group had. So that is what we've been doing in the foreseeable future. Is at Fox Valley Drupal meetups, we talk about recipes, how to improve them, how to collaborate on them. But I do like the idea of starting from basics and progressing. So it's like, that would be really interesting to take new people and week by week or meetup by meetup, build out an interesting Drupal site.
Yeah. And so I think we're getting close to our end time here. Yeah. Thanks, Bo, on the contribution lounge idea there. So I have no idea how that all works, but I guess we can share and all be on a session that we can talk. I don't know. There's a module for that, yeah.
Yeah. So what I can do, I have to step away from it, but I'm happy to go back into the contribution lounge if people want to talk a little bit more about it. Look at recipes. If you have ideas, we can help you get set up. Again, we'd love to just collect ideas and feedback on that. And lastly, there's a module for that. I totally agree. That was another discussion we had, is there might be a module for that. You might have installed it and not realized that
There's a recipe for that. Yeah.
like how to use it. If you had somebody that guided you with how to install, or maybe you missed a certain config and realized, oh, this module isn't what I needed. And then a month later, you realize that, oh, that was exactly the module I needed, or I needed an additional module. So, that's where it can be really helpful.
Yeah,
there's a recipe
idea
for that. That's great.
There's a recipe for that. That's awesome. Well, thank you, folks. Thank you so much. I guess this is we're at the ending point here now, Bo.
Yeah, we have 3 more coming up at 11 o'clock. We'll have James will be at 11:50 for doing some talking about layout, builder, and site architecture. Aaron will be in to do his first session for Lando, and Hussein will be doing static analysis testing for Drupal modules. We'll see how. And like I say, the contribution lounge is open all day, so if y'all want to go talk about recipes or whatnot, you can. And it should be open for at least 10 people to share, I think.
And yeah. So great. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Karen. How do I stop sharing my screen now? I don't even know.
At the bottom.
There we go.
All right.
That works.
I'll see you in Contrib. I have to step away for a bit, but
see you in the contribution room in a bit. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks again, everybody.
I don't know if you mean to still be live there, Bob. Okay, here we go.